Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the March My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. I'm starting off with this piece of pattern paper that I tried to stencil for a different project and I didn't end up liking it, but I was able to cut it into a smaller piece and I'm going to use that on this layout. I wanted to map my photo on this off-white cardstock. I didn't have a huge amount of it left, so I used some strips of paper and I'm going to attach them down to the edges of this white piece of paper because you're only going to see little bits of the off-white paper around the edges of the photo. I had some strips of paper to go along each edge of the rectangle. I used Distress ink in Vintage Photo and I inked the edges of all four of these strips of paper. For the two shorter strips, I'm going to create 45-degree angles on both sides, and then when I combine all of these papers, it's going to look like a little frame. In order to create a 45-degree angle, I just fold one of the corners of the strip of paper down, and then I cut along the fold, and then I use the 45-degree angle on one side as a template for the other side, and then I use the first strip as a template for the second strip. And now I'm ready to attach all four pieces down. First, I attach down the two pieces that I haven't cut any angles in, and then I layer those two other pieces on top. I found that this works out really well when I want to mount my photo on a particular pattern paper, but I only have a few strips left. This layout is the sixth layout that I made using the March kit. And even though I had a couple of pattern papers left, I only had a few strips of this particular color, so this worked out well. I print out stickers so that I can record the date of my photo. I used to always forget to write down the date and I would not know the date and have to kind of peel up my photo from the layout once it was all done. And I wanted to avoid that. So now I record the date that the photo was taken and also the date that I scrapbooked the scrapbooking layout and some other information on a sticker, and that really helps me when I'm ready to put my layouts into their albums. I'm going to have some banners across the bottom of my layout. I'm going to use a small strip of gingham paper that I believe was a branding strip, and I'm also going to use this beautiful pink pattern paper. I only had a few scraps of that left. That was one of my favorite papers. I find those papers that look like solids come in so handy when creating layouts, and I wanted to use every last bit of that pink paper. I cut a fishtail at the end of the pink paper. That was the branding strip and also one of the larger pink strips. And now I'm going to ink the edges of all of the elements that I plan to use on my layout with some of the Distress ink in Vintage Photo. Here I'm combining two different tags to create the color scheme that I wanted. And now I'm going to ink the edges of this tag and all of those elements that you see on my mat. I'm not going to use every one of them, but I do use the majority of them to create my layout. Many of the papers and embellishments that we received in this month's kit were from the Simple Stories Simple Vintage Spring Garden collection. So there were a lot of florals and butterflies, all of my favorite things. I also inked the edge of this large piece of paper, and now I'm going to begin assembling all of these items. I'm using this beautiful piece of pattern paper. I turned it sideways so the lines don't go in the direction that you would normally expect them to, but it didn't bother me. I hope that it's not something that looks too unusual, but I just loved the way that those red and green gingham stripes looked on either side of the layout instead of on the top and the bottom, just because of my particular composition. I used some ATG adhesive to attach those two banners together. And then I'm going to attach my photo, which I attached down to that yellow pattern paper that I added the stenciling to right on top of those banners. As I mentioned, I did most of the stenciling on that piece of yellow paper before I knew I was going to use it on this layout. Just so you know, I used the stencil that was included in the kit and a Tim Holtz stencil called Dot Fade. I combined both of those stencils on this paper. And then I used some Ranger texture paste to which I had added some heavy body white acrylic paint. I fussy cut these beautiful flowers from one of the pattern papers. I like the way they were really large in scale, and I have those on the right-hand side of my photo. I have the tag on the top of the photo, and then I began layering in just a few additional smaller flowers. I'm also going to incorporate some large butterflies on this layout. I fussy cut out 3 larger butterflies in yellow, pink, and blue, and I'm going to place those all around the layout. I have my title, which is Bloom, right underneath the pink banner at the bottom of the page. And I have one of the butterflies to the left of it to create that visual triangle with the butterflies. I'm also going to use some of the dimensional flowers that were in the kit. At first, I was going to have 2 in the lower left-hand corner and 1 in the upper right-hand corner, but then I decided that the one at the top was just a little bit too much, so I end up removing that one, just so there's a little bit of open area on the upper right-hand side because the rest of the layout gets rather busy. I'm also going to include 3 different sentiments on top of the tag. One reads, "Happy days spent together." The other one says, "Such a lovely moment." And then the third one says, "Stop and smell the flowers." I really liked all of those sentiments, and I also liked the pops of color that those different sentiments brought to that area of the layout. This kit had a lot of sticker and die cut tiny hearts, and I wanted to use those to embellish the page. So I picked out a number of yellow hearts, and those are going to be spread all throughout the areas where I have the embellishments. I removed the dimensional pink flower that was in the upper right-hand corner of the layout. I have half of a flower there at this time. That's a fussy cut piece, I think. I end up removing that as well. Sometimes it's not a good idea, I find, to have embellishments in every part of the layout, so I decided that I was going to remove all of the embellishments from that area. The only thing that ends up staying there is the pink butterfly. I've started to attach some of the items down to the page. I used some fun foam and I popped up the wings of the butterflies. I also used a tiny bit of foam to give dimension to the tiny yellow hearts. I had to be careful just to put a little touch of foam behind them so you couldn't see the green from the front. I also used some fun foam to pop up the sentiments that I have layered over the tag. And then I didn't include all the footage, but I also popped up the wings of the yellow butterfly in the upper left-hand corner. Then I continued going around the page. I popped up the sentiment underneath the photo that says "Happy Day." I added some adhesive to the tag. I couldn't quite decide how much of the tag I wanted to show, so I played around with the placement a little bit. And then when I was finally happy with its placement, I put the sentiments back on top of it and then used my ATG gun and attached those down to the layout. I kept moving a little flower that I believe is a daisy all around the layout. I couldn't decide exactly where I wanted to put it. I finally decided that I was going to tuck it between the butterfly and the tag. In the kit, we received a sheet of stickers, and on that sheet was this long green scalloped border. And I kept trying to add it to layouts as I created them, but I couldn't find just the right layout. But I thought that this was the one. This one was just perfect. I inked the edge of it, and then I placed it at the top of the layout, and I think it went really well with the background, and I was really glad to finally have a home for that sticker. I used some gel glue to attach down the white and the pink flowers that are in the lower left-hand corner. There was also a die cut flower there. I ended up removing that. Once again, I didn't want to add too many embellishments, so that one didn't seem to me like it added too much to the layout, so I'm going to remove it in a little while. I also wanted to include these green branches that I fussy cut out from the same paper that I cut all of the larger flowers out of. They were so delicate, so I decided to use gel glue to attach them down. Although I do have to peel them back a little bit later on. Thank goodness that I was able to peel them up easily. That's why I really don't like to use wet glue on my layouts right away, because I tend to rearrange things constantly. I used an EK Success photo corner punch, and I punched out some blue photo corners for my photo. I punched out 4. I was not going to put the 4th one down in the lower left-hand corner because I thought the flowers would cover it. But then later on, I realized that you would be able to see a little bit of it. So I do end up attaching that 4th photo corner down. That blue butterfly was missing its antennae, I think it's called. So I cut some out from another butterfly and I added those to the blue one. I added a smaller yellow heart behind the slightly larger one that's right on top of the title. And then there were lots and lots of bee die cuts and stickers in this collection. And I really like the idea of adding these little bees all around the flowers. So I picked out 3 bees. I fussy cut off the white border of them because nothing else on the layout had a white border. I inked the edges and then I spread them all around the layout. I was happy with the layout, but something about the lower left-hand corner looked like it had to be kind of edited to me. So I was thinking that maybe that white flower was just a little bit too big for that spot. So I peeled back one of the layers and that made it just the right size, I thought. I removed that half of a flower that I had there. I guess that die cut just wasn't meant to end up on this layout. And then I layered the 2 flowers together again, and I think that that looks a little bit better in that spot. Now I'm adding a couple of pearls to these flowers. I'm using some Dress My Craft unicorn beads. The color of these beads is snowy. I just added a few of them. I used some glossy accents to hold them in place. I tried to use some small ones and some larger ones because I like the way the contrast of the different sizes looks. I also had a blue bow in my stash that I put at the top of the tag. Then I began adding some self-adhesive pearls to the layout. I used a couple of different colors. I used some blue pearls on the photo corners. I put pink pearls in 2 different sizes on the banners and some small yellow pearls on each of those little hearts that are on the layout. There was a pearl that didn't have enough adhesive on it, so I used my glossy accents to help me hold those down. And then I also added some strips of white pearls. Those are 4mm adhesive strips to the centers of the butterflies. Now I'm using some Master's Choice Opal Glitter Medium to add a little bit of glitter to the flowers. The Prima flowers are already so beautiful, but I love this little added touch of glitter. I think that it just makes them look just a little bit more special, and I really like having some glittery areas on my layouts. So in addition to adding this glitter medium to the 2 flowers, I also use it to add a little bit of sparkle to the 3 butterflies. I didn't want to just have the glitter in one spot, and I thought that the glitter would look nice on those butterflies. Butterflies are one of my favorite things to include on my scrapbooking layouts, so I thought it made sense to draw some attention to them by coating them with some of this glitter paste. Now I'm going to add a touch that I love adding to most of my layouts, not all of them, which is some white splatters. I'm using some watered down white acrylic paint, and I am tapping some scissors against the top of the straw, the holder for the straw, and that helps to create some tiny splatters. I sprinkled a few splatters all around the page, but the majority of them are to the right of the photo. I realized I hadn't protected my photo, so I grabbed some Post-it notes that I had handy. Then I continued adding splatters all around the layout. I'm just looking for a light sprinkling of splatters on this particular page. Sometimes I can't get the splatters exactly where I want them, so then I'll go back in and I'll dab a few splatters or faux splatters with the straw that has a little bit of paint on it, just to fill in a couple of spots that I can't seem to get the splatters to go on. I thought that the layout was done, but then when I looked at it later on, I was thinking that it would probably look nice if I added some blue near the photo. There were little touches of blue, but I wanted to add a little bit more to the layout. So I used the large scallop punch from EK Success, that's to the right of my mat, and I punched out 2 scalloped strips. I inked the edges and I tucked them on either side of the photo, and I added some tiny pearls to each section of the scallop, and this layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed watching. I wanted to say thank you so much, not only for your views and for your likes, but also for all of the lovely, encouraging comments that I've received. They really are super important to me and they really make my day. Thank you so much. Please take a look in the description box and you'll find the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website where you can check out all of the beautiful kits that they have currently, and you can order a subscription if you would like. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope you find some creative time very soon, and I hope to see you again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.